All right, so we've got a fascinating collection here all about Du Fu,
Oh, yeah,
this
yeah.
incredible poet from ancient China.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we're going to try to do today is sort of unpack his story a bit
Yeah,
and figure out what made his poetry so unique and so powerful.
right.
And maybe even see why his words still kind of resonate with us today,
Yeah.
over 1,000 years later.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Du Fu wasn't exactly like a rock star poet in his own time.
Right.
He was actually known more as a tragic poet.
Okay.
Lived in poverty, didn't really get much recognition when he was alive. But his poetry, it has the staying power,
Yeah.
It speaks to something universal about the human experience, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm really curious about is
Yeah,
how this guy who faced so much hardship,
right.
was able to create art that still speaks to us today.
Right.
So I'm ready to dig in.
Okay, let's do it.
What about his family background?
Okay.
Was he always destined to be a poet?
Well, he definitely came from a family with some serious pedigree.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, imagine being like the 13th generation descendant
Oh,
of Du Yu,
okay.
this famous general who helped unify China.
Wow, talk about pressure.
I know, right? Talk about pressure.
Right.
And then there's his grandfather, Du Shenyan,
Okay.
who was a major figure in the literary world. He
Yeah.
was part of this elite group. They called them the Four Friends of Literature.
Wow.
Yeah, so, coming from a family like that,
Yeah.
it's no wonder he ended up a poet.
Right. Well, I also read that there was some pretty serious drama
Oh, yeah.
in his family history, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Not just scholarly pursuits and military victories.
Yeah, no, his uncle,
Okay.
Du Bing, pulled off this crazy assassination
Wow.
to save his father from execution.
Oh, wow.
Apparently, Du Fu's dad was falsely accused and imprisoned
Oh, no.
by these corrupt officials, and Du Bing, he just took matters into his own hands.
Oh, yeah.
It was a huge act of filial piety, which was a really important virtue back then.
Right.
And it just goes to show you the kind of environment Du Fu grew up in.
Yeah, that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
And then there's that story about his aunt during the plague,
Right.
putting Du Fu's life before her own son's.
Yes. Incredibly selfless.
Yeah, I can definitely see how these early experiences could have shaped his worldview,
Oh, absolutely. Those early years were foundational for him.
Yeah,
But what's interesting is that even with that kind of backdrop,
yeah.
his earliest poems are full of optimism and ambition.
Oh, really?
You can just feel this young man
Yeah.
eager to make his mark on the world.
It's like you can almost see him, right?
I know, right?
Like full of youthful energy.
Exactly.
But then things take a turn.
Yeah.
His father dies and he's got to face poverty.
Right.
It's like this sudden shift,
Mm-hmm.
a dose of reality.
It is, isn't it?
I wonder if that's something that, a lot of us can relate to.
I think so. That moment when life throws you a curveball, and for Du Fu, this hardship, it starts to really permeate his poetry.
Okay.
He even has to move to the outskirts of Chan,
Okay.
which was the capital city,
Wow.
because living costs were just too high.
That's a far cry from
Oh.
the carefree poet, right? Having to
Okay.
move because of rent.
Exactly.
But maybe this is when his poetry starts to become even more powerful,
I think you're right.
because it's rooted in these real life struggles.
Exactly. His experiences with poverty and hardship
Right.
directly informed his observations
Yeah.
about society and the human condition.
Yeah.
And this is where another key figure enters the picture.
Okay.
Li Bai.
Li Bai Du Fu's poetic idol, I guess you could say.
That's a good way to put it.
But their relationship seems complicated.
Well, think of it this way.
Okay.
You have the more serious, socially conscious Du Fu
Yeah.
meeting this larger-than-life, almost mythical figure in Li Bai.
Right.
And there are even poems where Li Bai teases Du Fu
Really?
for working too hard on his writing. Wow.
Yeah. Their personalities and their approaches to poetry were just vastly different.
It's fascinating that during their lifetime,
Yeah.
Li Bai was far more famous.
It was.
But it's really interesting how Du Fu's work
Right.
has stood the test of time.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder about, how we define success.
It really does.
Right.
Yeah. And it suggests that true greatness isn't always recognized in the moment.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes time for a work of art to be fully appreciated.
So we've got this backdrop of a difficult childhood,
Right.
financial struggles, this complex relationship with another major poet.
Right.
What happens next in Du Fu's life?
Well, things take a turn for the worse
Oh, no.
when he comes face to face with political corruption.
Okay.
He tries to take the imperial examinations,
Yeah.
which were like the ultimate test to become a government official.
Right.
but they were rigged by this cunning minister named Li Fu.
Wait, so the exams were completely unfair?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow. How did that impact Du Fu? Imagine, preparing for years.
Yeah.
Pouring your heart and soul into studying,
Right.
only to find out that the whole system is corrupt.
Mm.
It was a major turning point for Du Fu.
Yeah.
This wasn't just about, failing an exam.
Right.
It was about witnessing firsthand the abuse of power.
Right.
And the crushing of true talent.
Wow.
It left him deeply disillusioned with the government.
And all of this was happening during the reign of Emperor Xuanzong.
Yes.
Is that right?
A time that's often described as prosperous.
Right.
But remember, history is often written from the perspective of the powerful.
That's true.
Du Fu's experiences offer a very different perspective. He lived through a devastating personal tragedy that really exposed the stark reality of inequality in that society.
You're talking about the death of his youngest child.
I am. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And it happened during this supposed time of prosperity. This is where that famous line comes from. In the mansions, wine and meat go to waste, while out on the roads lie the frozen bones of the poor.
Wow.
It's raw, emotional, and a direct indictment of the inequality that he saw all around him.
His poetry becomes this voice for those who were suffering.
Yes.
Those who are forgotten by the powerful.
Absolutely.
It's not just art, it's social commentary.
Mm-hmm.
And then, to make matters even worse,
Right.
the Anxi Rebellion breaks out.
Oh, yeah. This rebellion was a cataclysmic event in Chinese history.
Wow.
Widespread chaos, violence, displacement.
Oh my gosh.
And while many people surrendered to the rebels, Du Fu remained fiercely loyal to the Tang dynasty.
Wow.
He even tried to reach the new Emperor Suzong.
It's incredible that even in the face of all that turmoil,
Right.
he still clung to this sense of duty.
I know, it's amazing.
But I imagine this loyalty came at a cost.
It did. He was captured by the rebels.
Oh,
And he had to witness the destruction of his beloved Chang'an.
I can't even imagine.
It's during this time that he writes Spring View.
Okay.
This really poignant poem filled with longing for his family
Yeah.
and grief over the war's devastation.
It's hard to imagine what that must have been like.
It is.
To see your city, your home torn apart by war.
It really is. And, it's a testament to his resilience.
Yeah.
That even in these darkest of times, he continued to create.
Yeah.
Spring View is just one example of how he channeled his personal experiences in poetry that speaks to this universal human experience of loss and longing.
Amidst all this tragedy and political chaos.
Right.
It's almost a relief to hear about his love story with his wife.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a contrast to Li Bai's more colorful romantic life.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah.
Du Fu's poem, The Moonlit Night, offers a glimpse into their relationship.
Oh, really?
It's this beautifully tender expression of love and longing, a reminder that even amidst hardship, human connection can offer solace.
I'm sensing a but coming.
Well, unfortunately for Du Fu, his life was rarely peaceful for long.
Oh, no.
He was briefly appointed as a remonstrance official,
Okay.
which basically meant he could advise the emperor.
Okay.
But he was a little too outspoken, criticizing those in power.
Let me guess.
Go ahead.
He was punished for speaking truth to power.
Exactly. He was banished for speaking out against injustice.
Wow. It seems like every time Du Fu caught a break,
I know, right?
something happened to pull him back into hardship.
It's like one step forward, two steps back.
It makes you wonder how he kept going.
It really does. But I have a feeling his story is far from over.
Yeah, we'll be right back to explore more of Du Fu's incredible life and work. So we left off with Du Fu getting banished again for speaking his mind.
Yeah, it seems like every time things started looking up for him, something would happen to knock him back down.
Yeah.
But he was eventually allowed to return from exile.
Okay.
And he spent some time in Huazhu,
Oh.
which was a place that was really close to the areas ravaged by war.
Oh.
And this experience really led him to write some of his most powerful poems.
Oh, wow.
They're known as The Three Officials and Three Farewells.
Just those titles alone sound heavy.
They do.
Like they're carrying a lot of weight.
They do, and for good reason. These poems are filled with these really vivid descriptions of the suffering that was caused by the war and forced conscription.
Wow.
The Officials at Shihao, for example, it paints this brutal picture of people being dragged away from their homes to fight in this war.
It makes me think about those images we see on the news today.
Right.
Of people fleeing conflict, families torn apart.
Yeah.
It's a timeless tragedy.
It really is. And what's so striking about Du Fu's poems is that he manages to capture not just the physical hardship,
Right.
but also the emotional toll that it takes.
Yeah.
He gives voice to those people who are so often forgotten
Right.
in the grand narratives of history.
He humanizes them.
Exactly. He
Yeah.
makes their stories real.
And in the Three Farewells, we see kind of a different side of Dufu's compassion, right? In The Officials at Xinan, for example, he's trying to comfort
Right.
those being sent off to war,
Yeah.
acknowledging their fear, but also urging them to be brave.
It's really interesting.
So even though he was deeply critical of the government and the war itself, he could still empathize with those who are caught in the middle of it all.
I think that's what makes him so fascinating.
It's a really complex perspective.
It is. He wasn't just a critic
Right.
or a propagandist.
Yeah.
He was a keen observer of human nature in all of its contradictions.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned hope because even though he was surrounded by so much darkness,
Right.
his poetry never feels completely devoid of it.
That's true.
There's always this glimmer, this belief in the resilience of the human spirit.
I think you've hit on something really important there.
Yeah.
His ability to find beauty and hope,
Yeah,
even in the midst of suffering,
right.
is one of the things that makes his poetry so enduring.
Yeah.
It speaks to our own capacity to persevere, to
Yeah.
find light in the darkness.
So what happened to him after Wazoo?
Okay.
Did he finally find some peace, stability?
Well, his life continued to be kind of a mix of hardship
Okay.
and these fleeting moments of solace.
Yeah.
He eventually moved to Chengdu,
Chengdu.
which is a city known for its natural beauty.
Okay.
And it's there that he built his famous thatched cottage,
Okay, I've heard of this.
which has become almost as legendary as the poet himself.
The thatched cottage sounds idyllic.
It does.
Did he finally find some respite there?
For a time, yes.
Okay.
The beauty of Chengdu's landscape really inspired many of his poems.
Okay.
But even there, he couldn't completely escape the realities of poverty
Right.
and the ongoing turmoil that was happening in the country. In fact, one of his most famous poems from this period is called The Thatched Hut, Torn Apart by the Autumn Wind.
Wow.
And it speaks to the fragility of even the most peaceful existence.
It's like even when he was surrounded by all this beauty, his mind was never far from the suffering of others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
His compassion was a constant,
Yeah.
no matter where he went or what he experienced.
I'm starting to get a sense of the man behind the poetry.
Yeah.
This wasn't some ivory tower poet
Right.
detached from the world.
No, he was deeply engaged
Yeah.
with the realities of his time.
Absolutely. And I think that's why his work continues to resonate with people from all walks of life across cultures and centuries.
It's true.
You know, he speaks to something universal about the human experience.
He does.
So tell me more about this time in Chengdu. Did he stay at the cottage?
So he actually didn't.
Okay.
You remember his friend Yan Wu, the military governor?
Yeah.
Well, Yan Wu died in 765 AD.
Okay.
And after that, Du Fu decided to leave Chengdu
Okay.
and travel down the Yangtze River.
I'm struck by how much he kept seeking new experiences.
Yeah.
Even in his later years.
Yeah.
It's like he was never content to just settle down and be comfortable.
There was definitely this restlessness to his spirit, this
Yeah.
constant desire to learn and explore.
Yeah.
And his travels took him to various places,
Okay.
including Kuzu, where he wrote some of his most breathtaking poems
Really?
about the Yangtze River gorges.
Wow. So even as he was approaching the end of his life,
I know.
he was still creating these incredible works of art.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Like he was squeezing every last drop of experience out of life.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
He was truly living and breathing poetry until his very last days.
So how did his journey end?
Okay.
Where did he finally find rest?
Well, Du Fu's travels eventually led him to Tanzhou,
Hanzu.
which is modern-day Changsha in Hunan province.
Okay.
And it's believed that he died there in 770 AD
Okay.
at the age of 58.
58.
The exact circumstances of his death are unclear, but some accounts suggest that he died of illness,
Okay.
while others claim that he drowned.
It's almost poetic, isn't it?
It is.
That his life ended on a journey,
Right.
surrounded by the beauty of the Yangtze River.
There's a certain symmetry to it,
Yeah.
a sense of coming full circle.
And while his death marks the end of his physical journey, his poetry continues to travel through time,
It does.
inspiring and moving people centuries later.
That's the power of art.
We've talked a lot about his life.
Yeah.
The hardships he faced, the people he encountered, the places he traveled.
Mm.
But I'm ready to dig deeper into the poetry itself.
Okay.
What made Du Fu's work so unique?
Right.
What are the themes and techniques that set him apart?
That's a great question, and I think it's what truly lies at the heart of understanding
Yeah.
Du Fu's enduring legacy.
Yeah.
And we'll explore that next.
Okay, so we've journeyed with Du Fu through this extraordinary life of his.
Yeah.
Witnessed the highs and lows, the beauty, the turmoil. But now I want to explore what's really at the heart of it all.
Right.
His poetry. What made his work so powerful, so enduring?
You know, when you read Du Fu, you don't just get a sense of history.
Yeah.
You get a sense of humanity.
Mm.
He doesn't shy away from pain or suffering.
Right.
In fact, he kind of leans into it, you know?
Mhm.
He transforms those experiences into something deeply moving and relatable,
Right.
even centuries later.
I keep thinking about that line. In the mansions, wine and meat go to waste, while out on the roads lie the frozen bones of the poor.
Yeah, it's so stark.
It's so powerful.
Powerful.
It feels like it could have been written yesterday.
Exactly, and that's one of the key themes that runs through his work, this
Yeah.
unwavering focus on social injustice, on the plight of the marginalized.
Yeah.
You know, he was a voice for the voiceless,
Yeah.
even when it put him at risk.
It takes courage to speak truth to power like that,
It does.
especially in those times.
Especially back then.
His poems are like a window into this period
They are.
of immense change and upheaval.
And he doesn't just document those events. He captures the human cost, the emotional impact
Yeah.
of war, famine, political corruption.
Wow.
He shows us how these larger forces
Right.
shape individual lives, families, entire communities.
And he does it in a way that feels so personal,
Yeah.
so intimate. I remember reading Spring View,
Yeah.
the poem he wrote while he was captive during the rebellion.
Yeah.
It's filled with this raw longing for his family, this grief over the destruction that he's witnessing.
That's what makes Du Fu so brilliant.
Yeah.
He seamlessly blends these personal reflections
Right.
with larger political and social themes.
Yeah.
And in doing so, he creates this incredible tapestry of human experience.
So we have social commentary.
Yeah,
We have personal reflection.
right.
We know he was also deeply inspired by nature.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the actual craftsmanship of his poetry?
Right.
How did he use language
Okay.
to create these lasting works of art?
This is where Du Fu's mastery really shines.
Yeah.
He was incredibly versatile,
Yeah.
experimenting with different forms and styles. Sometimes he would use, you know, the traditional structures of court poetry,
Yeah.
and other times he would break free from those constraints,
Okay.
really pushing the boundaries of language and form.
So there's this complexity, this depth
Mm-hmm.
to his work.
For sure.
But is it accessible
Yeah,
to someone who isn't like a poetry scholar?
I think so.
Can I, as an average reader, still connect with Du Fu?
Absolutely. What's remarkable is that even though his poetry is sophisticated,
Yeah.
it's also incredibly grounded in human experience.
Right.
His emotions are universal.
Yeah.
Love, loss, fear, hope.
Yeah.
And he expresses them with such honesty and vulnerability that it's impossible not to be moved by them.
It's like that saying, the more personal, the more universal.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the reasons why Du Fu has had such a profound impact on
Yeah.
Chinese literature and culture.
So what has been his lasting legacy?
Well, he's considered one of the greatest poets in Chinese history.
Wow.
And his work has been studied and imitated for centuries.
It's amazing.
He's credited with really expanding the scope of what poetry could be,
Okay.
bringing in a wider range of subjects and emotions.
So he didn't just create art.
Right.
He paved the way for generations of poets to come.
And his influence extends beyond just literature.
Oh, really?
His focus on social justice,
Mm-hmm.
his empathy for the suffering of others,
Yeah.
has made him a symbol of compassion.
Mm.
He's often seen as a voice for the voiceless,
Yeah.
a champion of the common people.
It's incredible to think that his words still hold such power
I know, it's amazing.
after all this time. If Du Fu were alive today,
Yeah.
what issues do you think he would be writing about?
Given his deep concern for social justice,
Yeah.
I think he would be drawn to issues of poverty,
Right.
war inequality, the things that we still struggle with today.
Yeah.
He'd probably be writing about the refugee crisis, climate change,
Right.
the struggles of those on the margins of society.
He'd be the poet of the people just as he was in his own time.
Ex-
What a powerful reminder of the enduring relevance of Du Fu's work and the importance of using our own voices to speak out against injustice.
Absolutely.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey,
It has.
not just through the life and work of one man,
Right.
but through the depths of human experience itself.
It really has.
You know, Du Fu challenges us to look at the world with compassion, to
Mhm.
raise our voices for those who are suffering,
Yeah.
and to find beauty and resilience, even in the face of adversity.
And perhaps most importantly,
Yeah.
he reminds us that we are all connected by these shared human experiences, no matter how much time passes, no matter how much the world changes.
Yeah.
Those fundamental emotions, love, loss, hope, despair,
Yeah.
they remain constant.
Du Fu's poetry is a testament to the power of the human spirit.
Yes.
To endure, to find meaning and beauty, even amidst chaos and suffering. It's a legacy worth cherishing.
It is. It